Today we're going to be learning about the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is the closest that the United States and the Soviet Union came to actual war during the Cold War time period. The Cuban Missile Crisis began when the Soviet Union started sending nuclear missiles to Cuba. Here's our map of the United States. Here's South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. And underneath that, we have Cuba. So the Soviet Union was sending nuclear missiles to Cuba, and almost like they were storing them up down here in Cuba. The United States was worried that the Soviet Union was going to launch their nuclear weapons from Cuba toward the United States, and that would cause a lot of damage. So the United States was really worried about these weapons being shot from Cuba to the United States. What President Kennedy decided to do was to send some ships down to block any more weapons from coming into Cuba. So here's some pictures of looking at the ships that he sent. And he set up a blockade so that people wouldn't be able to come in and send any more nuclear missiles into Cuba. This lasted for several days, and it came very close to a war between the United States and the Soviet Union. This picture here represents the United States blockade. So we have the United States up here, and we have Cuba down here. If you look here, these are where we had some of the missile sites from where they had been sent to Cuba. And this purple represents the blockade. So this is where the United States has ships blocking anyone from coming in to Cuba. So the Soviet Union was sending ships with nuclear missiles, and they were met by this blockade of US ships. They have two options. They can go and they can start a war. They can fight the United States and they can fight against those ships. Or they can send their ships back to the Soviet Union. At last, Soviet Union decided to send the ships back. The ships with weapons turned back and went back to the Soviet Union. This is the closest that they ever came to a war during this Cold War time period. After that, they signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty to help avoid similar conflicts in the future. To finish your work today, you're going to be studying two pictures that represent this time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and you're going to be using those pictures to help you answer some questions. The first picture that you are looking at shows the leader of the Soviet Union and our leader in the United States, John F. Kennedy. Notice what they're sitting on. Okay, what was the Soviet Union sending to Cuba? That's what they're sitting on. Notice how John F. Kennedy is pointing to something, and if we follow that string, see what it's connected to. What do you think might happen if he pushes that button? Follow that string. What would happen? Those are some of the questions that you will be answering about that picture. You have one more picture that you're going to be studying. Some of the Soviet missiles in Cuba had a strike range of up to 2,200 miles. This illustration shows the potential damage which could be brought on America. So here in Cuba was where the missiles were. Each of these arrows is representing how far that nuclear missile could go. Look at how far it could go into the United States and the damage that it could cause. The arrows show how many miles it would be to get to that city. So from Cuba to Chicago, that would be 1,333 miles. Look at the damage that could have been caused in the United States if they released missiles to any one of these cities. And look how far it could go from Cuba all the way to New York or Cuba all the way out to California and Los Angeles. You'll be using this picture to help you answer the questions. Please let us know if you have any questions today.